Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Inga Cotton. I'm the founder and executive director of San Antonio Charter Moms, and these are Charter Moms Chats. We've been going live 4 p.m. on weekdays to share information with families that will help them find schools that are the right fit for their children. And I'm really excited. We have a new guest post on the blog today, and the guest blog author is here with us. So Trinette Keffer is the headmaster of Great Hearts Western Hills, and she's been earning her master's and studying about the house system and how that builds morale and school culture. And not only is she researching it and writing papers about it, but she's also implementing it at Great Hearts Western Hills. And she had experience at Great Hearts Northern Oaks with the house system. So I'm really excited to have this discussion, and I hope it helps families learn more about how the house system works at Great Hearts Western Hills, and maybe they'll be curious to learn more about Great Hearts for their own kids. So welcome, Trinette.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to jump right into the blog post. Like, you start by sharing the example of the student, and you call him Blaine because we want to protect identities. But can you tell us more about Blaine and his journey, his transformation?
Well, I think that Blaine's story is an interesting one because it's not just about him. His story is just a small part of a larger positive story of many of our students. The year started off with still some COVID protocols that were restrictions. Our students had come off of a large portion, a third of them had been online for the whole year, the year before. They really had forgotten how to interact. There was also the ugliness of social media out there. And for a lot of them, especially in the upper school, just how do I be a young person in a world in which I've been a little bit isolated? And so the house system was an amazing way to bring a connectedness. Somebody mentioned to me that it was a little less like what Descartes says, I think, therefore I am, but I belong, therefore I am. And so that feeling of wholeness, in a sense of belonging to something bigger than themselves. And so we have a lot of students who started off like my friend Blaine, that they were struggling academically. They were trying to figure out, what is it that I am? What is my purpose here? What is my purpose, even as a student athlete, as just as a human being? And by having a sense of belonging and having teachers, consuls who cared about them, specific to them and their specific house, and finding ways to help them be successful is really his story, but it is so many students' story this year.
Yeah. Well, so this is my excuse to put the link up on the screen. So sachartermoms.com is our website, and that's where folks can read the whole text of Trinette's guest post, and that has Blaine's story. But what jumped out at me about it was that like, he found within himself the reason, like, why he wanted to focus more on his studies so that he could participate in the physical activities that are part of the house system, and that he wanted to, that was how he could bond with his teammates and show leadership, instead of showing leadership through acting up and inciting other students to act up. Instead, like, he had a motivation to bring his best self to what he did in school.
Yeah, so teenagers are what I'd like to think of as a very interesting animal that is trying to in this difficult age between I'm no longer a child and I'm not quite an adult, and I'm trying to find out who I am and what do I identify with, what are my skills, my talents, and so typically what they do first is try to find all the things they don't like, and maybe champion those things, and so at first I think that the house system, it seemed at first like, at our choosing ceremony, the very first day of school, a lot of the students just laughed. Because our teachers came in robes, and we had Gregorian chants, and we had all these relics and these things they were foreign to them. And their first thought was, this is really different, and I'm not sure about this. So their first instinct was to maybe sabotage. But as they began to see, and the teachers, this investment was mostly through my teachers, who they bought in back in July. We had a house retreat. They were new to all of this, and they just said, this is amazing, can't wait to do it. So I had about 15 teachers who just decided to nerd out with me and really imbibe the stories of each of their house family names. And so as that happened, we would go to a pep rally, and the teachers were in it all in. And so then these kids slowly started to buy in. So we had our athletic field day really early on. So we had it in October. So it gave them, and they hadn't really learned all the chants and cheers. And they, by the end of the field day, they were hoarse. And so then it was, oh, now you have to field a flag football team. Well, I wasn't really interested in Latin, but I need to pass Latin so that I can play flag football. And now I'm behind. And then, wait a minute, there's a way for me to get back on the team now that I, didn't do everything I need to do from the beginning. Little things like house consuls would, during their morning break, would say, I noticed that your locker is messy. You're going to come in with me. We're going to reorganize your locker. That's going to be your first step to success. So it was a series of things like that, slowly getting the buy-in. So we're in a really great place right now because the buy-in is fully fledged, and students they're so in love with what it is that we're doing that when a student is trying to sabotage, it does not last very long, because I love this and I love what my teachers are doing, and I've invested myself as a leader in this. So that's what's been exciting.
Yeah. Well, Great Hearts teachers are a special breed, right? They have a deep willingness to put in the extra effort to help students. But students that need the motivation to kind of meet them halfway. And so just because the teachers, they're always, working extra hard to have tutoring hours and things like that. But, the students need to, the light bulb has to go off. It's this teenagerness, right? That, sometimes they don't know what's good for them, because they want to experiment and branch out, and they're not obedient the way young children are. And yet they don't have the life experience to have good judgment the way adults are supposed to. So, so it's really hard. Oh, I wanted, we have a viewer, Brady Shadwell, wants to congratulate you for representing Great Hearts Western Hills. So thank you. Thanks, Brady. Thanks for watching. So I wanted to ask about, you mentioned about that there was a house retreat, and then there's the house lore. And so I was wondering if you could share more about specifically at Great Hearts Western Hills, what are the houses called, and what's the inspiration for the names?
Yeah. So we chose house names based off of family names because I wanted them to feel like family groups. So we have 2 J.R. Tolkien houses and 2 C.S. Lewis houses. So we have Oakenshield and Baggins from Middle Earth, and we have Pevensies and Reepicheep from Narnia. And the story of each of those family names is what feeds the lore. And so I was inspired by the quote by J.R. Tolkien in his essay on fairy stories. He says that humans, we simply cannot seem to escape a need to tell stories, a desire to reach beyond ourselves and connect to the deeper truths of who we are and what it means to live a life of meaning. And it happens through story. That's what we're inspired by. So they are building off of, so House of Pevensies is the 4 children of Narnia. They are the sons of Adam and the daughters of Eve. And so they've built this story of their house, but then they're adding to that story through the events they do this year. So House Pevensies had to put together 2 game booths at our Winter House Festival. And one of those booths won, I think they won the best decorations. And so that was part of their house lore, that we will talk about the house banquet at the end of the year, that as the house of royalty, they were well represented as aesthetic value and in the way that they created their tent. So the lore borrows from the original story and then adding to that to create a legend that will follow the students as the years go by.
So, and then there are different activities that the houses do together, right? So I think in the blog post you mentioned about the Friday meetings, including shenanigans, and then there's sort of intramural sports. You mentioned athletic field day, that was in October, and then the house festival, so that was in December.
Yes,
and then there'll be a banquet. Okay.
Yes, and then we had academic field day last Friday. And we have it'll be involved in our 8th grade promotion ceremony. We have a house banquet on the last day of school. And we just met with all of our 7th and 8th graders who are interested in being house mentors next year. And they are filling an application to basically come alongside of underneath the house console, which is the teachers in the houses, to help come alongside of our new students next year and any incoming sixth grader who struggles at the beginning of the year. So all of those activities, Fridays during our Lyceum. So every day we have Lyceum. Monday through Thursday, it's a study hall. And on Friday, it is house activities. So some weeks we've got House Pevensies, 5th and 6th grade playing against House Reepicheep in, we call hockey in the field. So it's our version of ice hockey in a grassy field. Then we have Capture the Flag. We have one house that's doing campus cleanup. We have another house who's doing etiquette lessons because they're going to have to learn how to eat a plate of spaghetti for the house banquet on the last day of school. So those activities happen every Friday, and it really has boosted our attendance as well because no one wants to miss the house activity on Friday. Yeah,
that's right. It's like Friday is like the last day you want to miss, right?
yeah.
So you mentioned some of the key players in the house system. So like you mentioned how the faculty house console or house consoles are faculty members,
Yes.
and through the house system they're forming these bonds with students, and they're able to offer that extra support. Like, hey, let me teach you. If you organize your locker, you're more likely to make it to class on time, right? So,
Right.
and then you mentioned that house mentors, and there's also house social committees. So yeah, if you could talk about these different roles.
Yeah, yesterday I actually sat with a teacher who I'd had a conversation with a student on Friday who was just really struggling with the rules. He was struggling with school rules and feeling frustrated. And so I met with his house console yesterday, and I said, I'd like to connect the three of us together and have a conversation. I'd like to help him do a touch point with him at least every other day with that student. He happens to have the student in one of his classes, but he wasn't go the extra mile. And I said, I'd be willing to buy them lunch once a month for them to have lunch together, because I feel like this man coming alongside of this younger man is going to do far more than I can do. And maybe even his peers can do right now to help bring him along and help him understand that we're his cheerleaders and we're here to support him. And that there is good in what it is that we're asking him to do. But it's not going to be through a discipline situation necessarily. It's going to be more of a relationship building. And so that is our main role of our house consoles. And so our social committee is made up of, we've got some 8th grade girls since the beginning of the year who proposed, they wanted to dance at the beginning of the year. And I said that we weren't ready. Our community wasn't ready yet, wasn't bonded enough together for something as perilous as a dance, because socially that can be very perilous. So we created the Winter House Festival, and they were the ones that organized the Winter House Festival. And so we're going to be meeting with them next week because they're going to be planning our dance that will be happening the first Saturday in May, complete with dance lessons. So it'll be a swing dance. We have we actually have one teacher here and one teacher at Northern Oaks who are members of the San Antonio Swing Society, and they're going to give our students some dance lessons. And then they're going to have their first dance. So the girls will help plan the decorations and the food that we'll eat and make the posters and be the communications. So that's building that into their responsibility as leaders as they raise to 9th graders next year. We want them to be keepers of the culture. We want them to now walk alongside the consuls in helping our younger students to appreciate what it is to be a house member. What is your role? What is your responsibility? And then how can we help you? I want our 9th through 12th graders to serve the school by being house leaders instead of something more like a student council where you sit on a board and tell the school what you want them to do for you. I had 50 students come for our house mentor meeting today, which just shows me that there's an excitement around wanting to be involved in leading and being a part of carrying this forward. And I think it's an important part that our students see that the adults here don't do things for them, but they are involved in serving the community. And that's how that bond really is strengthened.
Yeah, that makes so much more sense. I've seen, quote unquote student leadership where it's just kind of a checkbox on a resume, but there's not really a learning experience for it, and there's not really that sense of service that, and so like if this is the right way to do it, right? So the students are motivated because they want to dance and they have to figure out how to get it done.
Yeah.
But the school is supporting them by providing resources like teachers who are experts at swing dance. So that's a great resource to tap into. But like they have to figure out where they're going and how to get this done.
Right.
They're going to be more invested in it, and they'll want the mentors to come along behind them and also keep building and transmitting that culture to younger kids.
Yeah. When we did the Winter House Festival, the 2 weeks leading up to that event were the best 2 weeks we'd had on campus because there was a buzz of everyone who was helping the committee members get the planning and get the supplies. And we did it. We still had a whole week of school after the event was over. It was the worst week because they had so much purpose in those 2 weeks before that we're going to make sure next year that the event is the last Friday of school. Because they were deflated. It was over, Yeah.
Yep, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's lessons learned. But hey, how great to experience that sense of anticipation.
Yeah.
And that's something that was missing so much during the sort of darkest times of the pandemic when we couldn't gather and there was not a sense of hope. And it goes back to what you mentioned, the J.R.R. Tolkien quote, we live through stories, and it's the experiences that when we're in it, like it feels more vivid, and then afterwards it's part of the story, it's part of what we tell
Yeah.
about, and it forms who we are and how we have a group identity.
Right. I want them to know that they are part of a story and they're active players in this story. And what is the story that others are going to tell about the time that you were here at Great Hearts Western Hills? For our 7th and 8th graders right now, they're going to be our first junior senior class. So I said, you are going to be putting down the firsts for everybody to follow behind and either tell stories of or make better. And so how exciting is that?
Yeah, but if they feel like they're part of the story, then they're not going to be giggling about it or sabotaging it.
Right.
They're going to want to take it very seriously, and if anyone else starts to question it, that gets that gets tamped down pretty quickly. Yeah.
And that word sabotage is an interesting one. You had asked about shenanigans before. Shenanigans are what people might call pranks. We didn't like the word pranks because it has a really negative connotation. So we have some tight rules around shenanigans, but shenanigans are the things that your house does to promote excitement and a house fervor around who it is that you are. And so like Oakenshield did this the day before spring break. The night before, they put up blue streamers. Their house color is blue streamers all over the upper school building and balloons. And they did window paint with their handprints because they're dwarves. So they put dwarf prints all over the windows. And so when everybody came in first thing the next morning, like, oh, Oakenshield. But the reminder to them is, now you're not going to tear down what they put up, but now this is a challenge to you. How are you going to show house pride? What shenanigan are you going to plan? So they have to propose their shenanigan idea to the house consuls. The house consuls have to propose it to the house governors, which are myself and the other administration. And then we give them approval, and then they secretly go about it, get it done. And then they have to clean it up at the end of the day. So there were a whole lot of dwarves here at the end of the day that day, wiping off blue paint off of windows. And you would never have known it had happened after they were done. So that was what allows us to continue to do that. So we specifically say you cannot tear down another house in an effort to show house pride, but you can do anything. You can do things to build yours up. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Those are really good lessons. And that's part of shaping them to be good citizens, right? Because we need more of that in our civil society about how to be proud of who you are without tearing other people down.
Right.
Yeah.
And we also talk about the idea that some people struggle with, how do I take a joke, especially young people. So how do you graciously realize that you just, oh, you got me, sort of a thing, and not be angry? And then, so what is your response in that when like an April Fool's, how do you respond to that? And learning how to take a joke as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that's sort of the social analog of good sportsmanship, right? Of there's gonna be a winner and a loser, and respect the game, but and be gracious about it, because and then it's up to the creativity of each house to come up with their own shenanigans. Right?
Yeah, so take it as a challenge. You're not a victim of their shenanigan. You are like, oh, now it's a challenge.
Right. Like, let's set this up. Yeah. Well, so my next question, and you've touched on this a little bit, about the bonds between faculty and students. So like you talked about, there's a student who has lunch once a month with a house council, and So are there other examples you can think of, the bonds between faculty and students that are forming through the house activities?
So one of the things that I know that when you've got uh, each school or academy has a culture that they create, and when you have a house system that creates these smaller communities that are still bigger than a classroom, then the teacher gets to take some of those ideas and create their classroom community. And in that classroom community, you take a piece of that. So we'll have like you can walk into a Pevensies fifth grade classroom, and one of our teachers has Sons of Adam on one side, Daughters of Eve, and they've got class competitions. You know, is it the Sons of Adam or Daughters of Eve that pack up the fastest and are ready for lunch? And so then she's always scoring them, and at the end of the day, they celebrate which one has used that. So creating those natural bonds it's an opportunity to do funny things like name your pencil sharpener Smog, and he eats your pencils. So as you begin to do that, then now you've got this inside joke that you and your teacher have that happened in the natural course of the classroom, and the house system gives the story behind it to allow the teacher. She doesn't have to come up with something on her own, and it doesn't have to be connected to pop culture.
Right. Yeah, and so you mentioned, like, Sons of Adam, Daughters of Eve, that there's also like a broader point system, right? That for each house is earning points. So kind of how does that work? And do you think that has a positive impact on student behavior, that they're thinking about the consequences of what they do?
Yeah. So every week there's a house bulletin that goes out that lists the house with the least amount of infractions, the least amount of tardies, the best attendance gets points. Let's see. Oh, the house that wears the most house shirts on Fridays, and the house that has the least amount of detentions. And so those things build house points. I have to be honest, though, these students, because it's our first year of the house system here at Western Hills, have not yet been to a house banquet. They've not had the winning of a house cup. And so this amount of points sitting out there, it keeps growing, but they don't see what is the end thing to be excited about. So we're having to do a lot of talking that next year will take care of itself because they're not so sure. So what is this, house cup, and what does it mean to me to win it and be a part of the house that wins it? There's so much. I did the house system at Northern Oaks for 5th and 6th graders. And once there had been a house banquet, the story of that house banquet moved from year to year. And all you had to do is say house points are on the line, and students didn't need any more explanation than that. So we're still, our maiden voyage, still working towards that. So I'm doing a lot of selling of the house points right now, and I won't have to do next year. Yeah.
Right, because in the future, the culture will transmit from older students, right? So like a new crop of 6th graders will come in, and they'll hear stories about it and go, oh, okay, got it. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well, so you've mentioned that. Okay, so currently at Great Hearts Western Hills, the house system applies for 6th, 7th, and 8th grades.
So it's 5th through 8th grade.
Oh,
this year.
6th grade. Okay.
Yeah. And we will officially separate as a upper school 6th through 9th and a lower school K through 5. But our 5th graders will still be junior house members. They will be inducted into a house. So the 4th graders are all abuzz about what house they want to be in next year. And the teacher said that it's already catching fire, and that they're excited about that status next year. So we're going to have to find a way to make sure that they feel as much a part of it, but more in a junior sense to what the 6th to the 9th graders will do.
Yeah, no, I've already seen, because I've been hyping that this interview was coming up, and I've been seeing discussions about like, oh, well, Big Brother is in this house, and younger sister wants to be in that house too, and so like there's already like a lot of pride and investment in the house system from the younger kids coming up. So and then one thing about Great Hearts is that, or at Western Hills, next year will be the first year having high school students, right? So like currently it's K through 8, next year it'll be K through 9. So what's the sense among like those 8th graders? Like they're the leaders, right? And they're going to be experiencing high school next year.
Right. We've had 2 information nights about high school and then college down the road. And we've had really good attendance to those. We did a survey of our eighth graders, and I would say that 90% of our current eighth graders are returning next year in ninth grade, which is, in a charter school space, a lot of times that's where you lose a lot of students. And so I think that the investment in student culture, especially in middle school, I think a lot of times we do a good job of focusing on maybe the high school, especially juniors and seniors, the Humane Letters program that comes up in ninth grade. And getting students interested and excited about that. But middle school sometimes gets forgotten. And I think this is where we are embedding them in something that they are going to want to stay. They have a sense of a belonging that keeps them engaged, proud of where they are and what they're doing, and makes them want to stay on as a member of the academy. So I'm tickled. I'm pleased that many students are excited about coming back next year.
Yeah. So we were talking about different houses and the anticipation. So, so Crystal Morrow is a Great Heights Western Hills parent, and she says wants to give a shout out to Reepicheep, House Reepicheep, right? Which is so Reepicheep is the mice. That's right. So he's one of the heroes of the Narnia stories, right? He goes on his journey with Prince Caspian, and
yes.
Yeah, well, that's really exciting about growing into high school. And I want to mention, for anyone, like you mentioned Humane Letters, we on the blog we have what we call an enrollment guide blog post about Great Hearts. It covers all the different Great Hearts campuses in the San Antonio area, and Humane Letters is one of the things it talks about, like that it's a seminar format, it's a Socratic seminar, and it like according to the transcript, it covers kind of the English language arts class and the history class, but they're reading these texts and discussing them, and it's really when I was first learning about Great Hearts, like getting a chance to observe a Humane Letters seminar really made a big impression on me, because I hadn't seen high school students do that. In fact, when I was a junior in college, my classmates had struggled with finding the right textual evidence in the book for the to make their point during the seminar, and yet here's 10th, 11th, 12th graders doing it proficiently in a Great Hearts setting.
Right. And our eighth graders right now have, we've been kind of growing them into that role. So they are typically a Humane Letters classroom is in a U shape, or the tables are completely in a circle. So what we've been having them do is just push against the side of the desks. They've been sitting in a circle and really kind of walking through. The teacher's doing a lot of prompting of questions, but constantly asking questions like, well, can you show me where that is in the text? Can you build off of the last person who just spoke? So really training them so that they will naturally come to seminar with an interest in having read already and be prepared for the conversation, and then being more willing to speak in a way that draws others into the conversation.
Yeah. Oh, I want to bring another comment on screen. So Bridie, she's reflecting on what you were talking about. I think this is how like the social committee and the student mentors, like that they're showing leadership through doing, and Bridie was praising that as a way to teach leadership. And you can't just hand all the responsibility to kids right away. You have to kind of let them grow into it.
Right. And also try not to be a Martha Stewart and kind of take over it and say, okay, so we're going to do this, and then try to micromanage the whole thing. But I think one thing that Great Hearts does well is we try to plan things intentionally. So if I'm going to have students take over a role, then I intentionally think through what is their role, what is our role, and then really handing it off, and then saying, and here's your support. So it's always a house console who's involved, at least in an advisor situation, to make sure that there's some level of guidance. But I'm already surprised at how well our eighth graders have the ability and are already thinking, okay, so I hear how my teacher keeps reminding me of this, so I can have an understanding of how they would respond in this situation. So I'm going to make this suggestion. So they're already learning to form their own thinking with the guidance that we've been giving over the last year.
Yeah. Well, I hope that, you mentioned that for like the current eighth graders, like they and their families have gone to info sessions to learn about what ninth grade is like. But I know you also do things like school tours and information sessions for families who are new to Great Hearts. So, I always like to, in these sessions and interviews, like give families who've been watching and maybe they're curious about this, or maybe there's a middle schooler who's wondering where they want to go for high school. Like, so what are some good ways that families can learn more about Great Hearts Western Hills and about the Great Hearts campuses around San Antonio?
Well, obviously school tours, and I know that we're continuing to do school tours on Tuesdays. We walk the buildings, we go in the classrooms. We want you to actually come and see, uh, hold us accountable. Are we really doing what we say we're doing on a website? So come in. We did today. We actually walked into several different classrooms and watched students in action with their teachers. We are going to be doing a new family orientation on April 30th here on campus for both incoming kindergartners, any new student in any other grades. That would include grades 6 through 9. And then we will give them the opportunity to shadow for a day. So we will have some shadow days for students to actually sit in a classroom and start to get a feel for, okay, so I get it, because it's going to be a little daunting. Obviously, go to a new school, go to a school that requires uniforms, and what will I be able to fit in when I go? And the students will, so our house mentors will already be chosen by then. So for our 6th through 9th graders, there will be a house mentor who will be their buddy for the day. And then our K through 5, they will be choosing ambassadors from their classrooms to basically sit next to them and be their friend for the day. So hopefully when they leave after their shadow day, they're going to realize this is a place that I could belong.
Yeah. Oh, we have another comment to share. So Gus Orozco, he's praising your seasoned leadership, Ms. Keffer. Yeah.
Well,
and he's excited about what's growing.
Has helped us with our intramurals this year. He has been running soccer camps and has coached several of our soccer teams this year. Intramurals has been an integral part of us building our sports program this year. Because of the pandemic and the amount of students in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade who were online, we didn't have the ability to really be prepared to be in a league, a sports league this year, to have students who would be eligible academically and have the skills. So we've done intramurals for 5th through 8th grade this year. And it's a lot of students on a lot of different house teams having to play. So Mr. Roscoe really stepped up and helped coordinate and orchestrate that. We're going to have quite a good soccer program over the next couple of years.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's a great investment of energy, but it has paid such a benefit for students. And and being intramurals, like I'm sure it feeds into, like, are there house points on the line when they're playing intramurals?
Yes. So every house, every game win. So if you play one house against another house is 25 points. And then at the end, if you win the championship, there are points on the line for that as well. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So it matters, right?
Yeah. And then we were able to get a few, we were able to contact a couple of schools, and for 7th and 8th grade, we took members, team players from every house and put it together, made a Spartan team. So they have gotten some practice of competing against other schools this year. Our fabulous athletic director, Coach Disney, has done a great job of giving our 7th and 8th graders a little bit of competition outside of school. And we've done really well. So I'm so excited about, we'll be joining the Texas Charter School League full-fledged, all of our sports next year, including rugby, which will not be in Texas Charter School League, but we will be joining a league to do rugby next year. So we have a lot of exciting sports planned for next year. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm not aware of any K-12 school locally that has a rugby team until now. So that's really exciting.
Irving Upper School in Dallas.
Okay, in North Texas. Okay.
They've been doing it for a couple of years. So we're inspired. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so I guess I want to close out by putting some information on the screen so folks know how to get in touch. So I guess for Western Hills, the website's westernhills.greyheartsamerica.org. So that's a good way to contact the school. Like that's got email and phone and things like that. And the school is located on the west side of San Antonio, right? Kind of in the SeaWorld area.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and so they can apply online. They can go on the website look for school tours, and school tours are great. That's I feel like there's a lot of myths about Great Hearts, and the only way to see it for yourself is to go on a school tour, and and then you get that sense of like, okay, is this someplace where my child could thrive?
Right. Come see our students and our teachers in action. I think that you will be really impressed by what we like to call ordered joy. A lot of intentional order, but a lot of joyful things happening in the classroom.
Yeah. Well, so thank you so much for the guest post. I learned a ton about how the house system works and all the different roles in it, and how house lore gets built up, these great stories. And thank you for joining me on Charter Mom Chat so we could kind of bring these stories to life.
I appreciate it, Inga. You've been always such a great supporter of what we do here at Great Hearts, but also just the choice that parents have, which is really important.
Thank you so much. Okay, well, take care, Trinette. Have a great day.
Thank you.